Buying a rank 7 premium jet is a commitment. Not only are you choosing a plane you're going to play a few hundred matches in, you're also investing in a tech tree. The rank 7 pack sales started yesterday for PC players, and the packs that weren't on sale a few months ago are on sale this time, including some of the most popular premium planes in the game. If you're thinking about picking up one of these jets to grind a tree, now's the time to do it. The next sale is quite a few months away. If you do decide to pick one of these up, remember to use any content creator's link. I personally don't have a link, but I'll put a spreadsheet in the description that has all the CC links and decals. I wished I could be super conclusive and give objective recommendations of what to get in what order, but ultimately you should get something that suits your playstyle and get something that actually appeals to you. If you're playing a plane you find uninteresting to grind vehicles you don't care about, you're not going to have a good time. Also, value is subjective, and as a general rule, I only recommend buying premiums on sale, and only a handful of these premiums are on sale right now, but I'm still going to cover all of them so this video stays relevant when the sale ends. Alright, I want to knock these two out of the way real quick, A6E TRAM and Su-39. Unless you have an existing ground lineup and need these primarily for CAS, I wouldn't consider buying them. These airframes are not competitive in air battles whatsoever. You can still trundle around, maybe get some kills, hit some ground targets, but they should not be bought with air battles in mind. Similarly, they just added the Tornado IDS WTD-61. This is just a Tornado Marine Flieger without the anti-ship missiles. It's got no guided weapons for CAS, and it's hopeless as a fighter, so stay well clear of that one. I would say it's only good for bombing, but it's not a remarkable bomber either, and they nerfed the base respawn time. Gaijin couldn't pay me $70 to play that thing. I'm gonna go in order of the nations from left to right, starting with the F-5C, which is on sale. It's one of the most popular premiums in the game for good reason. The F-5C embodies the gunfighter playstyle. Its missile armament is very limited, having just 2 AIM-9E Sidewinders which are trivial to dodge by outpulling them. That means most of your kills are going to have to be with guns, and thanks to the generous ammo pool, the F-5C gets about 10 seconds on the trigger. However, as a light fighter designed to be cheap, the F-5C is lacking in equipment. It has literally no radar whatsoever, no ballistics computer whatsoever, and the RWR is the somewhat limited APR-25. However, defensively it's quite good thanks to the combination of 60 well-placed flares and little engines that produce a low thermal signature. Flight performance is the F-5C's best asset, and while thrust to weight is only one of many factors that go into that, it is one that I can quantify, which is why I'm including it in the video. F-5C has pretty weak engines, especially at low speed, but it's a nimble plane and can hold its speed well, making it a great dogfighter. The F-5C can't rely on missiles to get the job done, and it lacks the speed to control the engagement, but it's a really strong airframe, and if you like the gunfighter playstyle and dogfighting, the F-5C is a great option. It's personally one of my favorite premiums. I should note that if you buy the F-5C, you should use some of the GE to level up your crew skills if they're low, especially G tolerance and stamina, and buy expert crew, otherwise you'll have constant problems with blacking out. That goes for pretty much every plane in this video, but it's especially important on the F-5C due to its ability to sustain a high G turn. Also worth noting that the F-5C is an absolutely awful bomber, despite the fact that it can carry bombs and it can technically bomb bases. It lacks a ballistics computer and powerful engines, so if you're thinking about bombing in it, just don't. If you want an alternative to the F-5C, look no further than the F-4S, which is also on sale. The F-4S is the most modern US Navy Phantom, essentially an F-4J with wing slats similar to the Agile Eagle slats the F-4E has. Unlike the F-5C, the F-4S offers a very missile-oriented playstyle. With 4 Sparrows and 4 Sidewinders, it's got one of the strongest missile kits at 11.3, and while you do have to carry a gun pod due to the lack of an internal gun, the Colt gun pod is relatively small and light, so there isn't a very noticeable performance hit. The radar has pulse Doppler and HMD, there's a full ballistics computer, and the Phantom airframe isn't terrible at doing some bombing, especially with a lighter bomb load, certainly leagues better than the F-5C. The RWR is the same one you find on the F-14A, and it's a very quirky RWR, but long story short, it's not as good as the RWR on the F-4E and struggles at detecting pulse Doppler radars. 60 countermeasures is pretty standard, and flight performance is what you expect for a Phantom. It's not the worst airframe in the lobby, but you'll want to stick near teammates because the F-4S isn't a great dogfighter. Overall, another really strong offering, although in my opinion not as good tier for tier as the F-5C. Sparrows can be finicky at times, and with the new jets being 12.3, full up tiers can be very rough, but the same goes for all 11.3 jets. The F-4S is a very solid pick when it comes to the missile slinging playstyle. Because the F-5C and F-4S are both good, and the American tree is one of the easiest air trees to recommend grinding, I don't think you can go wrong getting either one. It's really a matter of preference and what suits your interests. Personally, I enjoy the F-5C more, but your mileage may vary. Next up is the MiG-21bis Lazur-M. This is basically copy-paste of the MiG-21bis in the Soviet tree, and it's not on sale this time around. R-60Ms are its main weapon, and they're decent missiles, but you don't have any long-range options. The Gish is standard as far as Soviet guns go, which is to say it's not super easy to use. The radar is straight up not good, the RWR is straight up not good. It's got a basic ballistics computer, and the flares are pretty standard but fire in an awkward direction. The MiG-21bis has quite a powerful engine, giving it some good acceleration, but it's limited by its rip speed at sea level, and as a delta wing bleeds its speed incredibly quickly in turns, but has good initial responsiveness. This plane is really not much to write home about. It isn't unique or anything, and it's not a bad plane, but it's not super impressive either. If you want the German air tree, this isn't a bad way to grind it. That being said, there are other premiums and other trees that I recommend getting before this one. Next is MiG-23ML, possibly one of the best premiums in the entire game, and it is on sale. This is only slightly worse than the tech tree MiG-23MLD. The missile kit consists of 2 R-24s, which are your bread and butter, and are backed up by 4 R-60Ms or 2 R-13M1s. It's got your standard issue Gish-23, and the radar is very unique. It doesn't have pulse Doppler, but it does have MTI, which acts kinda like pulse Doppler in the game, and its radar uses J-band, which means you can fire R-24Rs at certain planes that can't detect the missile launch due to their RWRs not detecting J-band. It's also got an IRST for slaving IR missiles like your R-24T or R-60M. The RWR is the SPO-10, which is pretty bad. The jet has some basic ballistics computer functionality, but it does have large caliber countermeasures which do help when it comes to flaring off missiles. The MiG-23ML's airframe is really great. It's got quite a bit of thrust and will happily hit its 1470 kph rip speed at sea level, but on the other hand, you can get your wings out and the ML has no problem fighting whatsoever. This is another plane I highly recommend immediately buying expert crew on as soon as you get it. The MiG-23ML is so good because it's so well rounded. It's got the excellent R-24 in both R and T variants that you can pick depending on your playstyle, it's got great flight performance for 11.3, and it's got large caliber flares. The RWR is lacking, and yeah, it faces 12.3, but I think the ML handles up tiers better than any other 11.3 premium. On top of the plane being good, the Soviet tree is also outstanding. I play all 10 trees, but if I was starting over, this would be the first tree I unlocked. So all things considered, it's easy to recommend the ML, especially on sale. Next we have the F4J UK, which is not on sale. Have you ever thought, man, I like the F4S, but I wish I could buy a worse version of it? Well, here you go. It's the same BR as the F4S, but it has sky flashes which have way less range than the 7F. Instead of the Colt gun pod, it has the much heavier Vulcan gun pod, which hampers flight performance even more. The plane lacks the HMD that the F4S has, the RWR can't pick up J-band, and the countermeasures and ballistics computer are the same. Flight performance, again, pretty sad, not as bad as something like the Tornado, but definitely not good, and worse than the F4S due to the gun pod. This is a sad plane. The higher tiers of the British air tree are really not worth the effort. Smith said the Typhoon isn't coming anytime soon. It's just really hard to find a reason to recommend this plane. If you absolutely must grind high tier Britain, yeah, this will do it, but my condolences if that's you. I really recommend looking elsewhere and getting something else if you can. For the next installment in the Phantoms That Are Straight Up Worse series, we have the EJ ADTW, which is also not on sale. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It's got 7 E-Sparrows instead of the E2s on the American F4E, the gun is standard, the RWR is worse than the American one, the ballistics computer and countermeasures are the same, the flight performance is worse on account of it not having wing slats. You know what, let's make a list of reasons why this plane is worse than the Israeli one at the same BR. That's a lot of red on the screen. Like with Britain, if you absolutely have to grind Japan, this isn't completely unplayable, but again, I can't recommend buying this and recommend getting something else instead. Next up, J7D, yet another premium not on sale this time around. J7D sits at the same BR as J7E, and J7E is great, so surely J7D isn't bad? Nah. It's got the same PL5 missiles like the J7E, which are really great, and it also has PL7s, which are magic ones if you're into that, but the PL5 is still better. And that's where the good news ends for the J7D. The Type 23-3 is just a Gish, very standard. The radar is a MiG-21 tier radar, which is to say you should probably turn it off since you have no radar missiles. The RWR is bad, unlike the J7Es. It's got a ballistics computer, it's got enough countermeasures, but the flight performance is really where this thing falls apart. The J7D is a reverse-engineered MiG-21MF and sits between the MF and SMT in terms of flight performance. Those are 10.3 airframes, this is 11.0 and fights 12.0. It does not have anywhere near the legendary dogfight performance of the J7E. The PL5s are really its best asset, and while the Chinese air tree is good and I do recommend grinding it, I think I'd rather play the A5C than this. My advice is to hold off and hope for a better premium, and in the meantime grind other trees first. Italy has the F104S TAF, not discounted this time around. This is just an F104S but with 9 Ps instead of 9 Js. You've got 6 hardpoints, but unfortunately you can't take AIM-7E Sparrows without giving up your gun, which is a bummer. It's got a Vulcan with 750 rounds, radar is not noteworthy, RWR is the APR-25, which is not great, and it's got a ballistics computer. This is one of those planes that can carry bombs with its full air-to-air loadout and not lose any missile hardpoints or too much flight performance, so carrying a couple bombs isn't the worst idea. 60 flares are standard, and like the F-5C, they fire backwards into the exhaust plume. The plane is very fast, and maneuverability might surprise you at certain speeds where it can suddenly pull 12 or 13 G. But ultimately, it is a starfighter at the end of the day, so turning ability isn't great and it can't really dogfight at all. This is another one of those premiums where if you want the tree, go ahead. It's not a great plane, but it's not terrible either. Next up, Mirage F1C-200, not on sale. Imagine the tech tree Mirage F1C, stick a refueling probe on it, give it a negligible weight and drag increase because of that, add premium bonuses, there you go. Mirage F1's best weapons are its Magic 2s. These are very powerful short-range IR missiles with the same type of IRCCM that the R73 uses, which is to say they become near unflareable at very close range. Super 530F have decent kinematic performance but terrible chaff rejection, making them pretty bad overall, and the R530E acts kinda like a fat AIM-9G. F1C-200 has defas, which are fine, the RWR is garbage, it's got a ballistics computer, it's got a lot of flares, which is very nice to have, and flight performance, while still not knocking anyone's socks off, has been buffed from where it was at release. This plane has a bad reputation from its state on release, but these days it's not too bad, and I was having a lot of fun playing it a few weeks ago with a friend. Although, is it worth $70? I'd wait for a sale personally. If you want top tier Mirages, this is the best way to get them though. Last premium that's not on sale, J35XS. I will forever maul about this being a premium. It should have been tech tree in the finish line, but I digress. J35XS is the most advanced Draken in the game, and the only one with countermeasures. It's got 6 RB24Js, which are AIM-9Ps, a pretty solid weapon loadout for 10.7, but the cannon is the most difficult one to use out of all the ones on this list. It has no tracers, it's awkwardly placed, and it doesn't have much ammo. The radar is whatever, you have IRST for slaving your missiles without setting off their RWR. Nobody's gonna set off your RWR because it doesn't exist, and be careful with your flare key because this jet only gets 12 flares. They are large caliber, but they fire in pairs, so that means 6 taps of the key with just flares, or 3 if you want to bring chaff. The flight model is fine, but it got nerfed after release, and the Draken just feels neutered now. It lacks that crazy first turn ability that it used to have that made it so much fun to use. So overall, the plane does have a lot of limitations you have to deal with, but if you can get around them, it's not a bad plane, and the Swedish tree is one of the more unique trees in the game. I know how Sweden players are, they set their mind on grinding Sweden and nothing else will do, so in that case, the Draken is absolutely fine. Last jet, and finally one that's on sale, Kfir Canard. The Kfir is basically a Mirage 5 with a J79 engine, and the Kfir Canard is the lowest BR Kfir sitting at 10.7. That's partially because the airframe is worse than the other Kfirs, but mainly because it has AIM-9Gs instead of Python 3s. Defas are standard and work fine, and it doesn't have a proper radar, but it does have a radar rangefinder which can be used to slave your AIM-9Gs. The RWR is the APR-25, and it has a ballistics computer. The countermeasure count of 36 is relatively low, and they fire out to the side, so you will have to be careful with that. The Kfir's main advantage is its engine and its insane high-speed acceleration performance, which effectively makes it a really fast plane, and if you're careful about radar missiles, you can climb and go absolutely ridiculous speeds, like Mach 1.7 or higher in normal ARB games. The good range of the 9G combined with the Kfir's speed makes it really great at a hit-and-run playstyle. But as a Delta Wing, it does aggressively bleed speed in turns like other Mirages or MiG-21s. The Kfir is a really great plane. I find it to be an absolute blast to play, especially with a squad mate, and it's one of my favorite premiums for sure. On top of that, the Israeli tree is very small, and with the Kfir, it's possible to get to top tier jets in fewer than 200 games, so I can highly recommend this one. Alright, so on to my thoughts. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, when you buy one of these, you're also investing in a tech tree. With that in mind, I think major nations are the best trees to invest in. If you care about high tier jets, at the very least, I think you should try to get USA and USSR. That pretty much has you covered and you get a nice variety. So I'd go F-5C or MiG-21bis first, with F-4S being an alternative to F-5C. If you want an alternative to the American tree, the Israeli tree gets you the same American 4th gen jets with slight differences, and the Kfir is also great, so while I think the American tree is better, I'd honestly go for either F-5C, Kfir, or F-4S depending on which plane you think you'd rather play. That just leaves MiG-21bis Lazur as the only other fighter on sale, and it's fine, but not very inspiring, and with the Typhoon likely not coming soon, I'd only recommend it if you need to grind the German tree for CAS. The only other ones on sale are the TRAM and Frogfoot, but since I don't play CAS, I'm not really qualified to comment on those for their intended role. Hope you got something out of this video. Again, I wished I could be super conclusive, but a lot of this stuff is subjective and different people will have different opinions about the same plane. Hope you guys are enjoying your holiday season, come hang out on Discord if you want, and thanks for watching.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?